Episode 5: The Vibrational Reset, Resonators, Sovereignty, and the Neuro-Divergent Operating System. Beyond the linear, reclaiming neurodivergence as multidimensional intelligence. Something begins to shift after stabilization. Your nervous system settles. Your identity reorganizes. Your perception sharpens, and suddenly you notice something clearly. Not everyone is navigating reality through the same operating system. Some people move through life by following external signals. Others move through life by resonating with deeper patterns in the field. And, interestingly, many of the people who operate this way are what modern psychology calls neurodivergent. Not broken, not malfunctioning, simply running a different operating system than the artificial matrix constructed one. One that processes reality beyond strictly linear frameworks. The day you realize you were never broken. There is a moment that many neurodivergent people eventually experience. It does not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it arrives quietly. But when it comes, it changes everything. It is the day you realize something profound. You were never broken. You were simply operating with a different perception system in a world designed for linear conformity. Many neurodivergent individuals spend years believing something is wrong with them. Too sensitive, too intense, too curious, too aware, too emotional, too imaginative, too different, too rebellious, too eccentric. Systems built on standardization often label these traits as problems. But in reality, many of these traits are signals of a different cognitive architecture, marked by heightened pattern recognition, deep sensory awareness, nonlinear thinking, multidimensional intuition, perspective, and perception. The very traits that once felt like burdens begin to reveal themselves as capabilities and aptitudes. Capabilities that become extremely valuable during times of societal transition. The systems that once demanded conformity begin to change, and suddenly, the people who always saw differently become the ones who see ahead and bring the new world into reality. Carl Jung wrote, "In all chaos there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order." What once looked like chaos in your mind may simply have been pattern detection operating ahead of the cultural timeline. Now let's look at the difference between followers versus resonators. The followers primarily rely on external reference points and react to them. They look outside themselves for direction, for validation, for meaning, for permission. They ask, "What should I believe? What is everyone else doing? What does this system say is possible?" In psychology, this is called the external locus of control. The nervous system is tuned primarily to reacting to the environment. In earlier episodes, we called this antenna mode. They absorb signals. They mirror the dominant emotional climate around them. This does not make them weak. It simply means the identity structure is environmentally dependent. On the other hand, the resonators. The resonators operate differently. They still perceive the environment, but the primary reference point is internal coherence. They do not ask first, "What does the world expect?" They ask, what resonates with truth. Resonators stabilize the internal signal first. Then they interact with reality from that signal. In physics, resonance occurs when one system vibrates at a frequency that influences surrounding systems. In human terms, resonators shape environments through conscious presence, clarity, and consistency. This is the beginning of sovereignty. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. Albert Einstein. We have created a society that honors the servant but forgets the gift. Many neurodivergent individuals simply never forgot the gift. They kept the fire of truth alive, regardless of circumstances and of external pressures to conform. Many resonators discovered that what they once tried to suppress becomes the foundation of their sovereignty. Hypersensitivity becomes perception, reliable data. Intensity becomes focus. Difference becomes innovation and vision. Intuition becomes an infallible compass. And awareness becomes guidance. This is not about rejecting structure or discipline. It is about recognizing that human cognition is far more diverse than standard industrial systems were designed to accommodate. Linear thinking builds infrastructure, but nonlinear thinking sees unlimited possibilities. And when the two work together, evolution accelerates. The vibrational reset we are speaking about is not simply spiritual, it is cognitive, psychological, it is neurological and biological, it is cultural and spiritual. It is the recognition that the future is not built only by people who follow existing structures, it is built by those who can perceive patterns that do not yet exist in the visible material world. And many neurodivergent individuals naturally operate in that space, not because they are superior, but their mind were never designed to run on a strictly linear, limited operating system. Sovereignty versus submission. This is where the deeper distinction emerges. Followers organize their lives around systems of authority. Resonators organize their lives around internal alignment. Followers consume narratives. Resonators create meaning. Followers wait for permission. Resonators assume responsibility and know they are authorized by birth to be who they are meant to be, without apology. This is not about domination, it is about participation. The moment someone stabilizes their identity and signal, they move from being a passive participant in reality to an active contributor to it, to an architect of it. The science perspective. Psychology already recognizes these differences. Research on locus of control shows that people with an internal locus of control experience greater resilience and presence, more wholeness and authenticity, stronger problem-solving abilities, higher life satisfaction. Neuroscience also shows that self-regulation strengthens the prefrontal cortex, allowing individuals to guide behavior intentionally rather than reacting impulsively. In other words, the brain literally rewires itself when a person transitions from reactive living to intentional living and embodiment. Spiritual perspective. Mystical traditions have described the same shift for centuries. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In the Gospel of Thomas, it says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it says, let a man lift himself by himself. These teachings point to the same principle, the movement from unconscious participation to conscious embodiment. If you have ever felt like your mind works differently from the systems around you, write in the comments. I was never broken. I kept truth alive. You may discover how many resonators are recognizing themselves at the same time. And this brings us back to the distinction we began with. Followers look for instructions. Resonators look for truth signals. Followers adapt to systems. Resonators eventually reshape them. The world needs both. But periods of transformation tend to be guided and led by those who can perceive new patterns before they become visible to everyone else. Why neurodivergent individuals often become resonators? This is where the neurodivergent operating system becomes relevant. Many individuals who do not fit neatly into linear social systems develop different cognitive processing styles, higher sensitivity to patterns, nonlinear thinking, deep perception, intense emotional and energetic awareness. These traits are often labeled as deficits in rigid systems, but in evolving systems they become strength. They become the new blueprint of evolution. Because resonators do not simply follow signals, they perceive patterns in the field. They detect distortions, they question narratives, they see possibilities earlier than most. In that sense, many neurodivergent individuals are not malfunctioning. They are operating on a different cognitive architecture, one that is more compatible with multidimensional perception and creativity. If you have spent your life feeling like your mind works differently from your family and the systems around you, comment. Resonators see beyond. You might discover how many others share that operating system too. The Vibrational Reset. At some point in the embodiment journey, a decision emerges, not necessarily spoken, but deeply felt. Am I going to continue operating as a reactive antenna? Or am I going to stabilize my signal and become a resonator, a creator, the architect of my own life? This is the vibrational reset. Not because the world changes overnight, but because your relationship to the world changes. Recognizing and releasing inherited patterns is a powerful step, but awareness alone does not stabilize a new identity. When an old lineage signal dissolves, the nervous system temporarily enters unfamiliar territory. The body and mind have been conditioned for years, sometimes generations, to operate within those inherited patterns. So after the interference is seen and released, something equally important must happen. A new signal must be installed and practiced consistently. This is where daily coherence practices become essential. One of the most powerful ways to stabilize this new identity and prevent the system from slipping back into old programs is through a simple but profound tool: gratitude. Not as forced toxic positivity, but as a biological and energetic practice that trains the nervous system to broadcast coherence. This becoming a resonator. Pause for a moment. Place one hand on your chest. Feel your breath. Then ask yourself a simple question. Where in my life am I still waiting for permission? Now, ask another. Where do I already know the truth but hesitate to act? That space between knowing and action is where sovereignty grows. Take one small step today that reflects your internal signal, not the environment's expectation. Your signal, your frequency, your energetic signature. In closing, reality is not something happening only to you. You are participating in it constantly, through attention, through emotion, through behavior, through the signal you emit consistently. You can live as an antenna, absorbing whatever frequency dominates your environment, or you can live as a resonator and broadcaster, stabilizing a signal that begins to shape the field around you. And that is where embodiment becomes creation, architecture. If this episode helped you understand your mind differently and more accurately, comment. I choose resonance. And subscribe to follow the Architecture of Embodiment series and to download the free ebook Energy is Everything, Using Science and Spirit to Master Vibrational Reality, and also to celebrate the launch of my practice on Hear Me, you can book a 20-minute free discovery call to deepen this work. Still Fire 1111? The frequency calls, the fire rises, and now it radiates. Heal deep, rise sovereign. Welcome.